Welcome back to Mentor Nation, the podcast for entrepreneurs looking for real mentorship, real strategies, and real stories so that you can go out and build your dreams. I'm your host, John Abbas, and it's time for another episode, so buckle your seatbelt and let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, John Abbas, coming to you live from Nashville, Tennessee. So before we bring on today's guest, I just want to let you all know that I am finishing up a really valuable resource that I'm very excited to share with you guys. I'm finishing up a blueprint that I've created that will show you step by step exactly how I find world-class mentors, which happens to be almost the same formula that I use to get incredibly successful and busy guests on this show. It's something that people have asked me a lot over the last several months, and so I finally wanted to create something. I'm putting in a lot of effort into this because I truly believe that it's a skill that you should have that will really help you with any goal or any vision that you're pursuing. I'll update you more as that comes available over the next couple of weeks. It's totally free, and I'm doing it just to add more value to this community. And I just really honestly feel like having a system for attracting really successful people in your life is important. And I haven't personally seen a resource that was really good that was out there, so I wanted to create it. Okay, so today's guest is someone that you really, really need to pay attention to, especially if you're an entrepreneur. A few weeks ago, I had a guest on the show by the name of Elaine Pofelt. She wrote a book called The $1 Million One-Person Business. And this book was all about how people all around the world are building companies to 7 figures or higher and creating time freedom for themselves. Now, the crazy thing though is these people are doing this before ever hiring their first employee. Like imagine that. Imagine building $1 million business before you hire a single person. And this is becoming more and more commonplace all over the world. One of the main ways that this new breed of entrepreneurs are able to do this is through the use of virtual assistants. Virtual assistants are skilled people who usually live in other places, often other countries, who are able to perform jobs for your business for a fraction of what it would cost to hire an employee. I want you to just imagine for a second, imagine having a full-time web developer or a web designer working for you 40 hours a week for $500 a month. Or imagine having someone that is running all of your social media channels, all your campaigns, updates, writing the content full-time for $400 a month. So how is something like this possible? Well, I want you to meet Jonas. John is the founder and CEO of onlinejobs.ph. Onlinejobs.ph is the largest platform in the world to find virtual assistants in the Philippines. Now, it doesn't matter what your business needs. General admin, web development, SEO, design, marketing, customer service, you can find it all on onlinejobs.ph. During this interview, we talk about everything you could want to know about hiring a virtual assistant. Now, trust me, you are going to learn a lot today. John explains how a medical issue forced him to have to stop working in his business for many months, which led him to have to train and use a couple of people in the Philippines to basically run his company for him. What he discovered was that those virtual assistants could do many of the tasks better than he could, and despite only working 1 hour per week, his company thrived. This accidental creation of complete and total time freedom and lifestyle led to his current company, onlinejobs.ph, which is what we are going to talk about today. If you have ever wondered how to create more time freedom, hire skilled people, even if you can't afford a full-time employee, or just find someone to do the things that consume a lot of your time, then this episode is absolutely for you. Sit back, relax, and please help me welcome John. All right, John, thank you so much for being on the Mentor Nation podcast. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So I just want to give a little bit of a backstory to the audience and just really to illustrate why I'm so excited about this interview, because today we're going to learn all things virtual assistant, which I think a lot of people listening, at least a majority of them, could benefit from this conversation like right now. And so, for me personally, I was listening to you on a different podcast and you were the guest. And I think the title of that podcast was, how to hire a full-time virtual assistant for 40 hours a week for less than $600 a month. And so obviously that was an extremely catchy headline. And so I was like, I have to listen to this. And you were on there and it was just blown away by what you've built, the company, and how many hundreds of thousands of people you've helped. And, for the audience listening, I just want to share, I was almost about to hire a college student to manage a few of my social media accounts. And, John, obviously, the economy in the US is unbelievably good right now. And so people, it's like they don't want to do anything for less than $300-400 a week. And so I was almost about to hire a college student to manage some of my social media. And I was going to pay her just to see what would happen. And I listened to your episode and you talked all about onlinejobs.ph and how you can hire a virtual assistant full-time for a few $100 a month. And I immediately got on the website. I was blown away by how good it is and how talented the people are. And I had a few interviews and I think I found my first one, man. So I'm excited and I'm excited to have you on, man.
Thanks. Yeah. I love your story. I love that you went and did it. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer. So if you don't mind, I'd love to start by having you just talk or share with the audience, what exactly is onlinejobs.ph and what does your company do exactly?
So this started in 2008. I was hiring people and it was just hard to find people at the time. Like I had to go through an agency. The agencies weren't very good at giving you what you wanted. And I was like, dude, I just want to recruit someone on my own. I want to contact a bunch of people and interview them. And I just had this idea, I think I could build this platform where we can contact these people. And so what I built is kind of like Indeed.com, where it's a job board for the Philippines. So international employers looking for virtual workers in the Philippines, where you go on and either you just browse the resumes, which we're approaching 1 million resumes.
Wow.
And then you contact the people yourself, just look and search and see what you find that you like social media management or Facebook ads or SEO or content writing or video editing or whatever it is, right? You would search and look at the profiles and then you can contact the workers directly and say, hey, are you interested in a job? I want to hire you full-time or I want to hire you part-time, whatever it is. Or you go on and post a job and say, hey, I have this role, I need a full-time SEO person. I need a full-time social media manager or whatever it is. And here are the responsibilities and here's what I want to pay and apply. And then you'll get tons of people applying to your job from the Philippines. And so then from that point, you're we don't mark up their salaries. They don't work for us. You're in direct contact with them. So there's no middle manager person. The second person I ever hired out of the Philippines was this amazing developer. And a couple months in, he said, sorry, sir, I put in my 2-week notice today. What? Why? And he says, I can't handle the office politics here. It's too much. I can't do it anymore. I'm sorry. And I was like, that's the worst. Right. I'm losing an amazing person because someone else is between me and him. That sucks. And so I built a system where you get direct access to the people. They work for you, directly for you, which really changes things as an entrepreneur, things that you would never think about. So that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I can't wait to dive more into that and just to the story. And so one of the things that really blew me away was just your story, how the inspiration came about when you were having a baby. Could you just talk a little bit about that as we get into, kind of how your company works?
Yeah. So this is 2003. I have a conversation with my roommate in college. I'm in college and we were talking about what we wanted to do in the future. And he was in pre-med, he was studying pre-med. He was going to med school. He's a doctor today, right?
Okay.
And he had asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to own my own business. And why? Well, because I want to control my own schedule and I don't want to work for someone else. And I think I want to make a lot of money and not work very much. And he was like, well, don't you know that small business owners work more than anyone else? This total condescending thing. And I was like, well, I think I can do it differently, total cocky, college, know nothing, but I think I know everything, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I graduate, have a job out of college for 10 months. My only goal during those 10 months was to quit my job because I'm not a very good employee. And it took me 10 months to quit. I was making a little bit of money online, but I was working 60 hours a week. And I was working 60 hours a week in my business. And that was when like, holy crap, I'm not doing this differently, right?
Right.
Because, you say something to someone and that becomes kind of part of who you are, right? And I'm working 60 hours a week and it sucks. And so I started trying things. I started trying hiring people from different places to outsource. And it was really hard. Like I hired locally, and the first thing 4 different people did was quit when they realized what I was doing online. I was like, oh boy, this sucks. I hired someone from India, and that took me like a week before I realized like this is why people think outsourcing sucks.
Right.
And it does. Like that was my experience, right? So I won't get into that. So you mentioned to me before we started recording, I think, that you started using Upwork recently, and it's been really good for you. So for me, I used Elance. This is before Upwork existed. Elance and Odesk merged and became Upwork. So it's basically the same thing. I used Elance, and the process was I hired this person to write a bunch of articles for me. It was contract work, right? Because that's what Upwork is.
Yep.
It's contract work. And so they did a bunch of work. They sent it to me. I paid them. I was so excited to get this work done because I hated writing articles. And then I looked at the bulk of stuff that I had, and I was like, and this like heavy feeling fell upon me. And I realized I just gave myself tons of work to do because now I have to do. I paid for these articles. I have to do something with them, and the burden just set in, and it was almost depressing because I don't want to go publish these things. I don't want to go post links and create links and headlines and resource boxes and all this stuff. And I realized that like this project thing this per project thing doesn't work for me. It's not what I wanted. And I was almost ready to quit and just give in like, boy, this sucks. You're right. Small business owners do just work more than everybody else. It sucks. So one day I had a conversation with this guy who tells me, hey, when you're ready to start outsourcing some of this stuff, make sure you go to the Philippines with it. And I was like, that's interesting. He said, yeah, because, and this is what he says to me, right? He says, yeah, because when you hire someone in India and they say yes, that means yes, I heard something come out of your mouth. It doesn't mean yes, I understood what you said. And I was like, that was my reaction, like your reaction, like what? Are you serious? And it kind of gave me hope for like, maybe there's a different experience to be had in hiring someone else. Because at this point, I wasn't really making a lot of money. I couldn't like hiring someone locally was a big risk. Are they gonna do good work? If they're not busy for any amount of time, I can't afford that. So it took me a couple of months before I did it. I finally took the leap. He gave me a reference to where I could hire someone full time, and this was the agency. And so I hired this person full time. It was the single most liberating experience of my life. And I had this guy whose full-time job was to do anything I asked him to do. And I had to teach him how to do it, but he would do whatever I asked, right? And that was instantly liberating because I was able to teach him the whole process of what I had mentioned before for the articles, like take these articles, write an article, write the headline, write the resource box, post it here, link it here. Now let's do it again, but this time link it to the other one and link it to my website. Now let's do it again, link it to these other ones. And so like pretty soon we built this whole big process of this whole marketing flow that was super, super effective. And I didn't have to do the work and he still worked for me, right? So I could teach him anything I wanted. And which, by the way, so as in terms of like the whole story, this was 2005, he still works for me today.
Wow.
Yeah. And today he's amazing. Right. So you asked me to tell about the pregnancy. So here's what happened. I had this guy doing menial work. He was doing some thinking work, but not very much because I didn't really understand what existed, like what was possible here. Because everybody in outsourcing says, oh, you have to give them exact step-by-step everything, and they can't think. If you miss a step, then you're screwed. And that kind of wasn't the experience I had, but that was still my thought process. Right. So my wife is 7 months pregnant. We go into the doctor's office. This is like 18 months later. We go into the doctor's office and the doctor says to my wife, you have preeclampsia. And if you don't go on strict bed rest for the next 3 to 5 weeks, you're going to lose this baby and you could die.
Wow.
And yeah, like obviously that was a big shock to me. And because I was still working a lot. And on the way home, I was just thinking, I'm not about to lose a baby over money.
Right.
I can't work. And so on the way home, I'm thinking, how am I going to deal with this? And I get home and I sent an email to these two guys that were working for me, the one that I've already told you about and another one that I had. And I said to them, hey, look, here's my situation. I can't work. I need you guys to take over things in my business. Now, before I go further with this, I want to preface this with these guys have been working for me for about 18 months.
Right.
I had spent a bunch of time. I had invested in these guys. I had trained them. I had worked with them. I had taught them stuff. I had taught them all about my business. I had taught them everything I could. And obviously there was more that they didn't know. But so for the next 3 weeks, I became Mr. Mom. I had 2 other kids. I took care of those 2 other kids. And I worked 1 hour during those 3 weeks. And while those 2 guys took over my business. 3 weeks later, my wife had the baby, this beautiful little girl, healthy and perfect and amazing. And for the next 2 months, my wife had a really hard time after the baby. And so for the next 2 months, I worked about an hour a week while I took care of my 3 kids and my wife. And during that time, like I came back. So any time I spent was just helping them to maintain what they were doing.
Right.
And when I came back, I realized my business didn't fall apart. My business is still here. And not only did these guys do amazing work, they did things to improve the business. And I'm living the 4-hour work week and they're running the business. And so there was a whole bunch of things that I learned during that time was like, number one, there's always going to be work to be done. Who's doing the work? Is it me or is it someone else? Because it was always me. And now it's someone else. And they were capable and competent. And yes, I had trained them and I had put a bunch of time and effort into it. But holy cow, was that time and effort worth it? Right. I learned just how good these people could be. Because before this, my experience outsourcing sucked. And now they had taken over major parts of my business from me. Right. And there were some things that weren't getting done, obviously, but not a lot. Right?
Sure. Yeah. It's not perfect. And man, I have to reiterate because you said something that is just, it gave me chills because I think like me personally, I've been exactly where you were a couple of times. Like your business is you dependent and then something happens. Somebody gets sick or passes away, or it throws your routine off. And it's just that scary feeling knowing that like, if you're not there, that the whole world will stop. And it's just like for you to be able to have been in that moment, have to take that time off, but like realize how liberating it can be putting your trust into other people and how they will deliver, even though everybody, especially here, I feel like so many people are just trained to believe that they're the only ones that can do what they do. And delegating, it means less like lower quality. And it's just so good to hear that.
Yeah. So on the other side of that is the cultural difference between like the US and the Philippines, where so you hire someone in the US, I think the typical person stays in their job today like 2 years.
Right.
Well, that's temporary, right? Like that's 50% turnover per year. And that sucks. Whereas the Philippines has this odd thing where as long as you gain their trust, so that they trust you and you treat them well, they're like loyal to a fault. Where, I mean, that guy that I hired, the first person that I ever hired still works for me today, 15 years later. And that's generally the experience. If you treat them well, they'll never quit working for you, which means you can spend time teaching them and training them and working with them and investing in them because there's a future in them, right? And so that difference of like you say, boy, if I'm not there, then it falls apart. Right. Well, when you start to hire people that are going to be there because you're investing in them, you're going to treat them well, you're going to pay them well, you're going to train them, all of a sudden they're going to be there. And now when something goes wrong, they have knowledge about your business. They care about your business. Your business success matters to them because it's their job.
Right.
And my experience has been that they will do all kinds of things to try and help make your business better as long as they trust you.
Absolutely. Now you said earlier that you had a mentor or friend that recommended choosing somebody from the Philippines. Can you elaborate a little more on why you chose and have just focused solely on that country? Like, could you just elaborate a little more on the culture and just why you're specifically focused on the Philippines?
So the guy who told me this was the owner of backcountry.com. And like at the time, Backcountry is gigantic. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, if he says so, then I'll do it, right? and so at the time, I didn't really have a reason. Since then, I've learned so much. So I'll just give you like 6 different things of reasons why this is different than anywhere else in the world. And these aren't things that like you go to Wikipedia and see why is outsourcing to the Philippines better, but this is just my experience. So number one, they're honest. to the point where my guys in the Philippines have my credit cards. They have access to my PayPal account. They have my bank account. They have my personal email account. They have access to our servers. Like they're trustworthy. Now, having said that, don't do something you don't feel comfortable with once you've hired someone until you trust them. But it shouldn't take you as long to trust them as it took me. I've seen hundreds of thousands of Filipinos get hired over the years, and there have been so few times where I've seen someone in the Philippines try and rip someone off, and almost every time when it does happen, it's because the employer didn't pay them. And so pay the people you hire, right?
That's right.
It's a third world country. That money, whatever the money is worth so much more to them than it is to you. Pay them, right? So they're honest. I already talked about them being super, super loyal.
Yep.
They have computers and the internet access, which means like it's super prevalent. You don't have to go through a service to hire them because you can find them online because they have a computer and internet access. And that place to find them is an online job. That's why I built it. They are so English is a primary language in the Philippines. It's not a secondary language. Like a lot of elementary schools teach science in English. They teach math in English. Street signs are in English. I've only been to the Philippines once. It was in 2010. So that's another thing. You don't have to go there. There's no reason to go.
Wow, you've only been one time?
One time. And that one time, so this goes back to what I was telling you guys earlier about the 4-hour work week. I spent 5 weeks on the beach there with my wife and my kids on vacation.
That is crazy to me. You have this humongous company. You're literally like the Airbnb or the Indeed of the Philippines /US, and you've only been there one time, and it was for a vacation.
On vacation, right? Right. I mean, this is everything that I ever dreamed of in outsourcing come true, which I didn't think was possible, right? So back to my story. I'm in a hotel lobby, and I see like the desk person arguing with a guest. They're both Filipino, and they're arguing in English, right? So English is super prevalent. They're very Americanized. They watch American TV or American movies. You won't have a communication issue really with the Philippines. They'll understand you. You'll understand them, which is very, very different than other places. Kind of the last cultural thing is they're not entrepreneurial. And this is an odd thing where they don't want to steal your business. They don't want to steal your business idea. They want a job. Entrepreneurialism is looked down upon in the Philippines. It's odd.
Interesting.
Yeah, super different, right? And so you kind of combine all these things together. Oh, there's one more thing. Like I've never seen this anywhere else, but the Philippines culture looks up to foreigners. So as a foreign boss, they will brag about you to their friends. Like my boss is in New York or whatever. And so they'll talk about you to their friends. And so you add all these things together, and you get someone who is honest and loyal and hardworking, and they speak good English. And then it's hard to find a job in the Philippines because it's a third world country, and you just gave them a job making good money, more than probably what their friends are making, and they work from home on their own hours, and they have a foreign boss that elevates their social status, and the job is hopefully stable and secure, which is better than most jobs in the Philippines. And you get this situation where they really want to keep their job.
Right.
The one condition, and I've said this multiple times, is they have to feel good about you. Like they need to trust you. And so if you go into this thinking, oh, I'm the boss and you're going to do my work for me, and what the hell, man, you didn't do this right. If that's your attitude towards this isn't going to work for you.
Right.
You need to treat them well, like as if they worked in your office and you're face to face with them. And that will make the biggest difference in success or not with hiring people in the Philippines.
Man, that's such great insight. I want to shift gears a little bit and just share with the audience, like, at what point should you think about hiring a virtual assistant, and what are some of the most common skills that they have, or especially on your platform, and then we'll talk about the money right after that. But for those listening, John, what would you say is the right time for someone to be considering or thinking about hiring a virtual assistant to help?
Okay, so what I'm about to tell you comes from my perspective, which is I've worked about 17 hours a week for the last 10, 11, 12 years, right?
That's awesome.
So what I'm going to tell you is different than what almost every other person will tell you, because most people aren't concerned with working less. They're concerned with with making more money and the grind. Like, I hate this, but like, we have this thing in our culture where it's honorable to work your butt off. It's awesome to work 60 hours a week because you're busy, and I hate it. I think it's stupid.
Yep.
Right? So here's my perspective on when are you ready to hire a virtual assistant? You are ready to hire someone when you have something in your business that you know how to do, that you know works, and that you can teach someone else to do. When you can teach someone else to do something, hire a virtual assistant and teach them. It doesn't matter if it takes you 2 months to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
Teach someone else to do something that you are currently doing in your business, or that you know how to do and you're not doing it because there's not enough time in the day to do it, and get that thing off of your plate and get it done. Whether it's done as well as you do it or not, it's getting done, and that's probably 80% of what matters. Often they'll do it better than you, but not always, right?
Right.
So what most people tell you to do is hire someone to do the things that you don't know how to do, or do what you're best at. And I think that is terrible, terrible advice for most people. The one situation in which I think that's good advice is if you're best at sales.
Right.
Because sales is what makes money. And the rest of the stuff that you're best at, like programming or video editing or social media, doesn't make money. That's not what makes money. Making sales makes money, so hire someone else to do the rest of those things. And if you're best at doing sales, great, do sales. Otherwise, hire someone, teach someone else how to do it, get some time back in your life, and then move on to the next thing that you could teach someone to do. And maybe it's the same person, maybe it's a different person, right?
Man, that's such great advice.
So your next question was, do you want to talk about that any? Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's great. So what are some of the most common skills? Because when I was on onlinejobs.ph, I was blown away. Like, a lot of the candidates, they have bachelor's and master's and some even doctorates, and they're so skilled. It's not like I used to think that when you hire a virtual assistant, it's basically a body that you can train and that's it. That's what I always thought. But when I was on there, I was like, no, these candidates, I mean, they already know how to use ClickFunnels and Infusionsoft. I was just mind blown. And so I just wanted to see if you could share, like, what are some of the range of skills that you see people outsourcing most, and some of the things that you've noticed that are prevalent on your platform that a lot of the VAs can do and are proficient at?
So the number one thing that I see people hiring for is a general virtual assistant, which is someone that you're probably going to train, right? Like, you're going to teach them. And that's what most people do. And that doesn't mean that you're not hiring someone to do something specific that already has skills, or that person doesn't have skills. But in any case, you have got to build a relationship with this person. And I think people often think, oh, they're skilled, I don't have to do anything for this, which is not the case, right? So the other skills are, we see so much of WordPress or SEO or design or social media marketing or programming or content writing or like e-commerce VAs or like a Shopify person or video editing or audio editing or tons of data entry or lead generation, where you're going to tell them, you're going to show them your process for doing this thing. Or like you said, Infusionsoft or ClickFunnels, Google AdWords, or like Facebook ads, or just pay-per-click stuff. We see accountants, we see mobile app developers, we see like user interface design or web design, or, I mean, there's the list of, we see telemarketers. The list of things that we see is basically anything that can be done on a computer or a telephone. People are hiring people in the Philippines to do.
Got it. That's perfect. Now, I know the big question that a lot of people are going to have, that I already know the answer now, but I just want to have you elaborate, because I think a lot of people don't realize exchange rates and economies and just what it's like in other countries. Because, I was a little mind blown at first. I guess the first feeling that I got when I saw that I could hire someone for 40 hours a week and it's like $400 a month. And I was just like, man, am I like, I don't want to feel like I'm taking advantage, but it's not like that. Can you just share with everybody, what the minimum wage is like, what the exchange rate is like, and what the quality of life is over there for the amount of money that we would be paying them?
Yeah. So the Philippines is a third world country. No, they don't like to be called a third world country. They like to be called a developing nation. So when I first started hiring, I was paying this agency $750 a month. They were paying the worker $250 a month. That programmer who I told you who quit, amazing dude. He was making $250 a month. Now, this is 15 years ago, and salaries have gone up since then because accessibility to the Philippines. And kind of the world has woken up to this, to how good the Philippines is. And so salaries have gone up. So $400 today for a full-time person is on the low end. A minimum wage. So I recently had someone say, like, why is my job post not working? I asked for these skills, which was too many skills, and I offered to pay $200 to $250 a month. Like, well, that's why, because that salary is ridiculously low. It's not close. So like the minimum wage of a person in the call center industry is going to be making $300 a month at least, probably $350 as a minimum. And they're going to get bonuses. Like they're going to have paid time off, and they're going to pay their Social Security, and they're going to pay their health insurance, and they're going to pay, there's some other stuff there. So I would say that you're starting at like a minimum of $450 a month for a full-time person. And it's going to go up from there. A full-time programmer you can find full-time programmers are like $600-$700 a month. You can find graphic designers at $400, $500, $600 a month. Those are all like starting salaries. Like you're finding a beginner here. From there, like this. So here's a tip. When you're interviewing, when you're hiring someone, you're interviewing, make sure that if you're going to do a Skype interview with them, do that towards the very end of the process, once they've gained some trust in you, because life in the Philippines is different than here. They don't want you to see the concrete walls, or they don't want you to hear the chickens clucking right outside their open door. You know, their houses are small. They live with their parents. They have a 2-room house, or, maybe they have a little bit more than that, but 2 rooms meaning like a kitchen and a bedroom.
Right.
So like when I was there, this was 2010, I remember being in a restaurant that I brought my team together and met them all, which was amazing. And we were in a restaurant, and it was like 80 pesos for a meal, and 80 pesos was like $1.40, like $1.50, something like that. Right. So it's definitely like everything is cheaper in the Philippines, except for electricity, which is probably more expensive than in the US. So like you're paying someone $500 a month. If they're married and they live alone, their wife is also working, or their husband is also working. And so they're making $1,000 a month, which is, they're living, right? They're not in super poverty. They're not doing super well, but they're living alone. If it's just them and they're making $500 a month, they're probably living with their parents,
right?
Which is normal, right? It's definitely a different culture. The biggest thing that you'll see is that they are super, super thankful for the job.
Right.
And that's like, so if you go on and look at resumes, you'll see what people are asking. Like, here's how much I want to make. Here's how much, can you pay me this much, please? And then when you hire them, rather than the attitude of like, oh, my stupid American boss, their attitude is, thank you so much for this job. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's my experience, is they just are so grateful to be able to work. And really, so when I was in the Philippines, I had 2 different experiences like this, where I'm in the grocery store. I start talking to the guy stocking shelves and ask, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Manila. Well, we were on an island, a 14-hour boat ride away from Manila. We took a plane, but he took a boat ride, right? 14-hour boat ride, and then another boat ride to get there. And well, from Manila? Yeah, this is where I could find a job.
Wow.
Oh, but I leave here in 2 weeks because I've been here. My 6-month contract is up. That was standard. Like the person we had coming to our apartment as a masseuse, which was $2 an hour, plus a tip, so it was like $10 an hour, she was there from Manila, a 14-hour boat ride, and then a transfer, and then another boat ride, and living in poverty and making very little money for 6 months, because that's what their contract is. It's temporary. And so much of the work there is temporary, part-time, that when you hire someone long-term, it really, really makes a difference.
Man, that's really incredible. And I know we're getting close on time. I just have a couple of other questions, because this interview has been just so helpful. I mean, just like everything you've covered has just been very powerful. So do you think that there are more and more people opening up to the idea of virtual assistants now? Like, is it something that's becoming more and more common rapidly, or do you think that people are still, for the most part, closed off and uneducated?
So as soon as people learn about it, they're open to it. This is what happened to you, right? Like, you heard the story and was like, holy crap, man, that's awesome, right? That's what happened to me, except I had to discover it on my own. It's definitely becoming more and more common. Like when one of your friends hears you have a good VA in the Philippines, they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, how can you do that? How can you outsource and not keep it locally? Like, that's super uncommon anymore. And the other side of that is people usually Like usually when people are hiring someone overseas, it's not that they're sending a job that would have been in the US overseas. It's that this is a job that we couldn't have handled in the US. And so now we're hiring someone in the Philippines. And now we're making more money and now we can handle something in the US. Now maybe we want someone in the US, right?
Right. How big is your platform now? Like how many users? I don't know if you have any stats, because I mean, obviously you're approaching 1 million resumes. That's in and of itself incredible. Like, is your company just growing like leaps and bounds?
So we had 24,000 Filipino workers sign up last month. And we had 12,000 employers sign up last month. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's a lot. It's a lot. It's definitely growing.
And you're managing all of this from just Utah at home.
Yeah. I mean, I have a business partner in Idaho, but we have 26 full-time people in the Philippines who work for us, and this is what they work on.
Man, that's incredible. And one of my last questions, and I want you to share this because you said something earlier, and you're so right about how everybody in America, it seems like it's just programmed that working 24/7 is like a bragging right. And I'll never forget, and I want to share this story with you because I was blown away. I had the opportunity to live close to, he's a friend of mine, but he was from Burma. And for the first month when I met him, he was talking about how bad it was, like over there, like Burma, they were going through a civil war and all of these different issues. And he came to America and he's working like, all day, every day. He was making cabinets, shelves. And I remember having a conversation with him one day, and it was hard, to kind of conversate because he was still learning English. But I remember asking him, I was like, so kind of what's your goal and your vision? And he said something that I've never forgotten. This was years ago. He said to me, he's like, well, I just want to make enough money to save and go back to Burma. And I just remember, I was like, what do you mean? Why do you want to go back to Burma? He's like, I have never seen a culture of people where all they do is work. He's like, at least in Burma, we work a couple hours a day and then we spend with our family and friends and we do this and that. And I've never forgotten that. And it's so true. It's like we just have a culture of work, work, work. You've been living an unbelievable lifestyle. You have this great company, but you have been working 15, 16 hours a week for over a decade now. Like, what is that lifestyle like? Could you just talk about like the things that you do and why it's so important that people think a little differently when it comes to time and money together?
So yeah, things are, I would like to say that like my life isn't all that different, but it is. I mean, it is. So I'll tell you what I've done. Yesterday was a holiday. It was a school holiday. A lot of people worked. Like the people around me worked. I went skiing all day yesterday with my kids. I took 2 of my kids, my 14 and 17-year-olds, into the backcountry. We climbed 3 different mountains and skied off of them. And so that's after a weekend and I haven't worked. And today I got up, and this is what I usually do. I got up and I read my scriptures and I ate breakfast and I made breakfast for my kids. And I sent my kids to school, and then I did yoga. And then I came and got on this podcast, and then I'm going to have lunch with my wife. And then my kids will get home at 3:00 and I will go on a bike ride with them. And that's kind of like, my wife said, hey, for Christmas break, let's go ride our bikes across New Zealand. Sweet. Let's do it. Next week we leave for Cancun for a week. So here's the thing. My whole life, my whole business life, every decision I have made since I figured out that I could hire people in the Philippines, every decision I've made has been based around who's going to do the work. If we do this thing, if we start this project, if we take on this thing, who's going to have to do the work? Is it me or is it someone else?
Right.
Who's going to be ultimately responsible for this? Is it me or is it someone else? Because if it's me, I don't want to do it. I don't care how much money it'll make me.
Right.
Because time is worth more than money. And so that's always the question that I ask is, who's going to have to do the work here? Is it me or someone else? It can be me up front. That's fine. As long as it transitions to someone else doing all of it. And it's a very clear transition path to someone else doing it. So that's like the thing that has always shaped allowing me to work the way that I work and live the lifestyle that I live.
John, I can't tell you what a breath of fresh air that is to hear that. I mean, it just, between me and you, we have a lot of guests on this podcast, and their whole philosophy is the opposite, right? Work yourself to death. Work, you're not working hard enough. And I feel like that philosophy leads so many people to just feel guilty all day and not ever live in the moment, not ever be present, because no matter how much they do, they feel like they're not doing enough. And here you are, you have an incredible family life, spiritual life, you have a great business, you have all the time freedom. It's because that was your goal, that was your vision, and it's possible. And you are a huge example of that, and I appreciate that. The last question I have is there one big takeaway that you would like to leave the audience with regarding your company, hiring a virtual assistant, delegation, before we wrap up the podcast?
Yeah, I have two, actually. So you said I'm an example of it's possible. I'm not the only example. It's possible. I could show you dozens of other people. If you go onto Online Jobs and you click on real results, you'll find dozens of people doing this. Maybe they're not working 4 hours a week or 10 hours a week, but they're working less and they're spending time with their families. And I'm not the only one. So that's one takeaway. This is possible, right?
Right.
It's hard and it's not immediate, but it's possible. The second takeaway is you just have to try it. This doesn't work for everybody. I gave the example earlier. If you're going to go into this with the attitude of like, they're going to do the work for me, and
right,
and I don't have time to deal with you, it's not going to work for you. And I see a lot of people that think like, oh, I'm going to make this work. But then that's their attitude. It doesn't work. So the only way you know if this will work for you is if you try it. You got to give it a shot. Like the potential upside you've heard today, the potential downside, if this doesn't work for you, is you lose a couple $100 and right? But that in the end, it's a leap. Like when I took the leap, it took me 2 months before I took the leap. And I'm so glad it only took me 2 months, not 2 years or 10 years or whatever it was,
Absolutely. And that's so doable. You're not even asking a lot. It's just like, don't be a jerk and believe it's possible and take a chance. Like, it's not like you have to go through a million hoops. Like, it's so reasonable. And so, John, I want to thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it. Guys, listen, this is not a sponsored ad. I am using this myself. I am excited about it. Make sure you go to onlinejobs.ph, check it out. You'll be blown away just like I did. Is there anything else as far as the audience, any way that connect with you, your company, what you're doing? Like, is there anything else that you would like to reference before we end the show?
So as you can imagine, at 17 hours a week, I'm pretty protective of my time. So I don't do phone calls. I don't do social media. But if you do want to get a hold of me, you can. All you have to do is go to onlinejobs.ph and use the contact us link, or reply to an email that we send you and say, this is for John. Please send this to John. And it obviously doesn't come to me, but everybody knows, oh, if they say it's for me, they send it to me immediately. And I will personally respond to you. So I want to help. I'm willing to help. I love seeing employers succeed with this. And frankly, we see like a 50% success rate, which is pretty awesome, right?
Totally. So, John, it's been a pleasure, bud. I really appreciate you being on here today, and I think you inspired a lot of people and educated a lot of people. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me. It's been good.
Absolutely. Wow. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and now have a whole new perspective on outsourcing. Funny story, I listened to John on another podcast, and that's what led to all of this. But when I listened to him speak, I immediately realized that I needed a virtual assistant. I have several businesses, several different Facebooks and Instagrams and LinkedIn's, and I have different websites. And I realized immediately that I needed someone after that interview. And so I went on the website, I signed up, I posted a job to totally recreate the Mentor Nation podcast website. And I immediately got like 35 candidates. I narrowed down, it was really simple, and I found one. And depending on when you are listening to this, the entire website for my podcast was actually done from a VA that I found on onlinejobs.ph. As of recording this, she has been working for just over a week and is almost done with an incredibly robust website with tons of features, different pages. It's so far just been an amazing experience, and I'm so excited about it. If you are looking for a VA, go to the show notes of this podcast. I put an affiliate link on there. I created one through Online Jobs. If you use the link that I posted in the show notes, you'll get a discount. Like, the VAs are already very, very affordable, but you'll get a discount and you'll get some free bonuses just for using that link. So make sure, if you do plan on hiring one, just use that link so at least you'll save a little money on it. Well, guys, that's all for today. I will see you next week with another exciting episode. So stay tuned, have an incredible week, and go make something happen.